everyone. My name is Jesse Chason with Lisa Blanchard as the host of Airing Addiction.
I share often my journey started on this campus. Got sober as a client here, just like you.
I really do see phenomenal change.
Always hope. I've seen situations that on the surface look impossible become possible.
Doing this podcast is to share those recovery stories, be honest about what the challenges are and have some real conversations, but kind of share that out on the airwaves.
Welcome in everybody to another episode of Airing Addiction. My name is Jesse and I'm so glad you're listening, whether it's on Facebook Live, whether it's around the time we are recording. We are at the tail end of August, almost fall. It's getting a little cool in the morning. So happy you're here listening to us today. We have another quality, great guest with us. And just as a reminder, we are also at the precipice of Recovery Month. So you will notice, as we always do every Recovery Month, that we will have a weekly episode instead of our monthly episode. So come on back for that every week for the next 5 weeks. And I will turn over to Lisa to introduce our awesome guest today.
Thanks so much, Jesse, and welcome everybody. As we wrap up the summer, I'm just really excited to have this guest on. I've actually been thinking about having him on for some time, since I actually met him on a plane following a conference. And so, you never know when you're going to have a great conversation with someone. And that's really what this podcast is all about, right? Having a real and great conversation about addiction and recovery. And so I'm really grateful that we have Earl Murphy on with us today. He's the former enterprise account executive at Salesforce. And what's really cool about it is he served as the Global President of Soberforce, which he will tell us kind of all about, but it's their employee resource group dedicated to supporting individuals in recovery, allies, and those exploring a sober lifestyle. And so during that, Earl championed the expansion of a recovery-friendly workplace culture, which is something that's starting to get a bit more traction. I've been in actually some conferences where there's a real movement around creating a recovery-friendly workplace. You can be a certified recovery-friendly workplace now as well. But really, we spend a lot of time on this podcast and in our lives talking about the power of peer support and what that does to reduce stigma. And there's a real opportunity to do that even in a sales, right? And even in a corporate environment. So how do we support individuals that really we know a cornerstone of recovery is work? So how do we allow both of those things to be in the same space in a safe way? And so Earl currently works as the account executive at Cribl. I hope I'm saying that right, but you can correct me when you talk a little bit more about your own experience, and is an instructor at the University of New Hampshire's Paul College of Business and Economics. And he's passionate about helping organizations build workplace environments where individuals in recovery can thrive both personally and professionally. And so with that, we get to hear directly from Earl and hear about your own story. So would you like to get us started, Earl, and tell us a little bit about you? You can start at whatever point you would like.
Appreciate it. I'm honored to be here. Lisa, Jesse, thank you for having me. I'm grateful for this opportunity and want to applaud the important work that you all are doing. I appreciate being a voice among many, and I consider this service work, being able to share my own experience, strength, and hope with other people with the goal of something resonating, that if something lands or sticks, that we've accomplished our mission today to help somebody else expand their thinking about recovery. In my own experience, so we were chatting before the episode began here, that I'm originally from Arlington, Massachusetts, so consider myself a Boston native New Englander. And I look back, I really expected to drink the whole time. Like as soon as I hit high school, it was on. There was a freshman keg in the woods. I played football and baseball, so freshmen reported early before the start of school for football practice, and the seniors would kidnap you and, take you out. And basically there was this just natural expectation for me that drinking was going to be a part of my life from the jump. And from the age of 15 to 37, I drank alcoholically throughout. And what really confused me along the way is that I really had a good upbringing. I did well in school. I had a family that loved me. I had friends. I traveled and had life opportunities. I went to college at Syracuse. I played baseball. I joined a fraternity, and every step along the way, drinking was a centerpiece. It was just there. And I talk about my own drinking experience as a currency, that I thought the way that I drank or had access to alcohol, that it was somehow like a stock value, that it bolstered my being and my ability to fit in or feel better about myself or perform. And then in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, man, I really fell for it. I took it hook, line, and sinker. And instead of rising to the occasion, I believe we all fall down to the level of our training or our being, whatever foundation or core values we have. And when I was drinking, I really had no, call it, spiritual compass. I just knew directionally I wanted to be successful and do well and have a good life. And there was always this lingering wonder that I had, like, when is this going to end? How does the weekend warrior, that Don Draper, that madman, when does that come to a reckoning? And one way I describe my own experience with alcohol is that it was cool for a while, but after a while, it was just not cool anymore. And fast forward to the end of my drinking, it did get dark. Life contacts you. We all have to step through serious circumstances, whether it's the loss of a loved one or a big career change or something just unexpected and very serious. For me, it was the loss of my grandfather, who I was very close with, who I idolized. He was very successful. He drank through and through. He was one of my idols that I embodied. I thought, oh, if I'm going to follow in Granddad's footsteps, go to Princeton, be an entrepreneur, start a business, do well, travel the world, I'm always going to have a cocktail in my hands at some point. Like he drank every single day. And I think back, like he didn't, have a program of recovery. AA, which is my saving grace, that's the 12-step program that I subscribe to and has worked for me. And I share that not to break anonymity or offend anybody, but to share with the world, like, this is what has worked for me. And it's community. It's like-minded people who don't want to drink today. And that was something that I didn't have in my life. I always associated myself and surrounded myself with people who drank or drank like me. And that continued into my professional career. So, Lisa, you mentioned, the corporate world and being in sales. And I can't believe it, but I've now survived and found ways to thrive, I guess, in sales, in a corporate culture for over 20 years. This is my 23rd year. Nice. In the workforce. And I look back again, I just expected this drink by default culture would always be there. And I think it's still very prevalent out in the world. You don't know what you don't know. And it is trendy now to be sober or sober curious or choose non-alcoholic options for a variety of reasons. And I think that is so wonderful because it helps to normalize sobriety, that not everybody out there chooses not to drink because they're an alcoholic or that they got in serious trouble like me. Like I cannot drink in safety. I recognize and accept that now. And it bled into work. My drinking plus work responsibilities, plus getting married, plus becoming a dad, I ran out of room for the drink. So something had to give. I knew I needed help. And I'm so grateful. Today, I dial in 8.5 years sober. It's truly, for me, a one day at a time approach. And I know I can't do anything alone. That everything that I do to stay sober has been taught to me. I didn't make anything up. I don't claim expertise other than following the instructions and advice of other people who have gone before me. And I'll segue into Soberforce and the work piece, because that's another good example where I had always drank at work. I work in sales, you go out to client dinners, you go to sales kickoff or conferences, and alcohol was everywhere. It was just something that I was always around, I always participated in, and I didn't know how to not drink. So about 8 years ago, I was fortunate enough to earn a role at Salesforce. And I started off as an enterprise account executive in 2019. Our daughter was about 5 months old. I was a new dad. And I was like 7 or 8 months sober. I was in my first year of sobriety. So I was very fragile and didn't know how I was going to navigate a big corporate environment like Salesforce, which is super competitive, fast paced, innovative, just phenomenal experience. And when I joined Soberforce, which is an employee resource group dedicated to sober curious, sober allies, anybody who doesn't want to drink or drug on a daily basis, it's community. That didn't exist when I joined Salesforce. So the origin story of Soberforce is that a handful of senior executives in the pandemic recognized people were more isolated, more vulnerable, and getting in more trouble in one way or another, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And they simply created a Soberforce Slack channel. It was public. It was suddenly open to, at that point, like 60,000 employees. And people started to join and post and say, hey, I'm sober. Hey, I have a loved one who's in trouble trying to get sober. Like, it was just this crowdsourcing of information and connection. And as an aside, I think that's an important call out, because it was as simple as that in terms of starting a movement. And Salesforce's phenomenal organization, I mean, really pioneers so many technologies, but also people initiatives. The first employee resource group was the Salesforce Women's Network from like 15 plus years ago, designed to break the glass ceiling. And now there are, I say tribes, but like communities. You can find your tribe, your people in any walk of life. There's Faith Force, Vet Force, Bold Force, Ability Force. And Soberforce was a natural fit. It was fully embraced by leadership. And it really opened, I guess, the aperture for me in terms of what sober living at work really meant. That I could connect with community. I could come out and share my sobriety and wear it on my sleeve. And it wasn't something that I had to hide, that my story suddenly became my personal brand. And it became, my manager said, hey, like, this is your differentiator. You know, everybody can drink. Like, this is who you are. So that's something else that was really unique and special for me, is I had a supportive manager, you know, somebody who stood beside me, elevated and celebrated my sobriety. And he encouraged me. he helped me join Soberforce. He applauded when I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about volunteering to become join a leadership role." And then they asked me to be the president, and that lasted 3 years, which was an incredible honor, truly like the crown jewel of my career. And Soberforce, beyond living in Slack, it hosts a monthly meeting. It's not a recovery meeting. It's like a community discussion. There would be a group guest speaker. You pick a topic, and it's just people helping people, like coming and sharing their own stories. The flagship event, like where Soberforce really has a presence, is at the annual conference, which is Dreamforce. It happens every fall in San Francisco. And this is like 50 to 100,000 people who descend on San Francisco, take over the city for a week. And historically, as you can imagine, there's a lot of drinking going on. So the Soberforce Happy Hour is an event that is a refuge for anybody who wants a change of pace, to get a break from the norm. And it was so popular. Like, we had over 500 people each year. It sells out. And it just spoke to the demand that there are so many people out there who don't want to drink for whatever reason. And, the status quo of going to a conference or being in corporate, I think that can get old and dangerous in a lot of different ways. So beyond the Soberforce Happy Hour, we ran a Dry January campaign in the spirit of high performance, how to show up and finish out the fiscal year sober, healthy, a better version of yourself, and to deliver results back to the company. Don't limp across the finish line. How do you optimize and finish strong? So that was a cool take on Dry January. A lot of people participated. Sales teams competed with each other over Dry January performance. Holiday gift giving, like, don't just send a bottle of booze out the door, because you don't know what that means to the recipient. It's easy to subscribe to, whatever wine club or liquor club. But like, if somebody sent that to me, that would make me feel really uncomfortable. And also a sign that you don't know me. Like, we haven't connected on a personal level. So that erodes trust. It's a nice gesture, but it's not what you ultimately are aiming to accomplish. So all sorts of just decentering from alcohol, moving away from the traditional norms. And all of these things, to me, create a workplace friendly, recovery friendly workplace. So I'll wrap with this, that it's about people having the courage to just raise their hands and say, "Hey, I don't drink, or I don't drug. Do you want to grab coffee? Like, should we create a Slack group and just share stories? Just create space and hold space so that the drink by default culture doesn't, live as a wet blanket, no pun intended, over your own culture, like company culture." So I feel so grateful to have experienced Soberforce. I left Salesforce earlier this year for a change in my career. You pronounced Cribl correctly. So I went from 80,000 employees to 1,000 employees. It was just time for me to learn something new. I went from enterprise software to cybersecurity. And I'm 6 months into my new role. And I'll end with this. The senior vice president, when I was being interviewed, he said, "Tell me about your learning style. Like, how do you like to learn? This is going to be a big jump for you." And I said, "My learning style is being sober, that I show up each day sober. I am connected. I don't take a chemical escape, God willing, ever. And I am on a continuous expansion path of learning." So that's all thanks to sobriety, having a beginner's mindset, and not trying to get outside of myself. So that I thought was a nice example of my own differentiator, and it landed. I have not been forced to drink. Everybody celebrates and appreciates, how I show up as my own sense of self. And it's for me, a program of attraction, not promotion. I'm not showing up at a new employer saying, hey, we need a sober force. Hey, we need to do this. It's just telling stories at this point and making sure I don't drink, one day at a time, so that I can continue my employment and serve my customers and be a good friend and colleague. So I'll stop there and look forward to the discussion. Thank you for letting me share my story.
Thank you so much, Earl. If I could just jump right out and make a reflection right off the top here. You said you grew up in Arlington. I grew up right down the road in Revere. And the expectation was to drink, right? And then you get into the workforce and, college and the workforce, and the expectation is to drink, and you're around it all. And for the last 8.5 years, you've changed that expectation of now it's no longer, expected to drink. And what a way to lead with the strength of, hey, my learning style is sober. I no longer expect to drink. So that was just something that I picked. I have a ton of notes here, but something just off the top to reflect on that, you really changed that expectation.
Yeah. And that doesn't happen overnight. I will speak from my own experience that have to overcome a lot of fear. And fear and faith can't live in the same house. So having faith that my sobriety will carry me forward and not giving into the fear of stigma or punishment, whatever scenario I'm going to make up in my head, that, making a conscious decision and putting a stake in the ground, like, hey, this is how I'm going to live and operate today. It's just for today. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But, for me, building momentum little by slow, even if I stand still for a day and don't go backwards, that's still forward progress over time. And that is powerful. It doesn't happen overnight.
And sorry, Earl, I misplaced the lead there. I'm also in recovery. And when you said one day at a time, I got my 1 day at a time bracelet on. So
Nice.
I'm picking up what you're dropping, man.
Congratulations to you. Yeah.
So I definitely have a lot of thoughts and reflections, but I want to kind of start with one of the first ones. And thanks so much for sharing with the transparency, your experience, your life, right? It's not always this really kind of traumatic backstory that leads you to these places. And sometimes it is. We've had lots of guests where that is, but it's just that, like, the culture, right? So there's so much in this around culture, whether it's workplace culture, just the culture and environment that we're in, and that it's really about changing that culture and creating different environments. And one of the things that you said is you kind of fall to the level of your training, and it made me think of, I think it might be, I don't know if you've read James Clear's Atomic Habits. It's a great book, but he talks a little bit like you don't rise to the level of like your dreams, you fall right to the level of your systems.
Yeah.
And I just think like this such a great example of kind of building some systems that look different than what was already there, right? That like the predominant, particularly in sales, right? Particularly in conferences. I spend a lot of time in those spaces too, and a lot of time with software kind of folks, that there is this expectation that there's systems that are really driven and built to continue a process of having, alcohol be that expectation. And the other quote that really, and I've said it on this podcast before, I'm a bit of a broken record in general, but I think that things become popular quotes because they're true, is really just the Margaret Mead quote of like, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And, that's how everything starts. And that's how Soberforce started. And it was just a Slack channel and just an opportunity for people to have a different kind of conversation. Like you don't need to have like a whole program process, right? Like you can just literally make space and allow folks to talk to each other. And so those were a couple of my early thoughts.
Yeah, well, and thank you both. It resonates with me that workplace culture doesn't seek out this type of change. Even from like an experimental perspective, because I always talk about, I guess it's the salesperson in me, the business value of sobriety. That whether that is employee productivity, absenteeism, retention, what does it cost to have an open bar? What is the liquor tab at a sales conference or kickoff? Like, there are so many quantitative, not qualitative, but just like you start tallying up the financial impact of drugs and alcohol in the workplace and in that culture, that it makes a whole lot of dollars and cents to start looking at recovery friendly workplaces, encouraging people to have mocktails instead of cocktails, like just shift away from risky business, things that can invite trouble into the workplace. I'll share another anecdote from Salesforce that there was an internal, before Slack, we had a tool called Chatter in Salesforce, and Mark Benioff, the CEO, this was way before my time, but like 20 years ago, had traveled to an office. Of course, it was in Boston, and there was alcohol in the office. And he posted a reminder with a picture of booze in the office, like, hey, this is against company policy because it is risky and can make people feel uncomfortable. Like, alcohol is sanctioned and approved at select events and moderate. Like, it was very formal and procedural, but it also had this nice personal undertone of like, you can make people feel uncomfortable. Like, if you're drinking in the workplace, that is not safe, not just for you, but for other people. And I always hold on to that. It is different. And I guess to your point, it takes different minded people to just come together and have a voice, speak up and say, hey, we're going to have a customer dinner and we're not going to feature a cocktail. True story, I hosted a dinner over the holidays a few years ago, and I had a Shirley Temple as the featured beverage, and people loved it. People still ordered beer and wine or whatever. Like, that was totally in bounds. But we moved a lot of Shirley Temples that night, and it was just, putting it out there, like saying, hey, you can enjoy something different, and it's okay this evening.
Yeah, and I love what you're doing, Earl, and I love what you're saying, because it's so prevalent out there. Whether it's mocktails, whether it's you had mentioned sober curious before. I mean, the data speaks for itself that on the whole, people are drinking less for a multitude of different reasons. Whether that be health challenges, or people finding recovery, or just allies of people in recovery, and I've done some work around researching that and really getting the word out, like you're doing, that like the expectation doesn't have to be, oh, I'm going to this work function, I have to be uncomfortable the whole time because people expect me to drink, right? I love me a Shirley Temple every once in a while, right? I've been to many work functions where I don't have to drink. I've been to many dinners where maybe somebody that doesn't have an alcohol use disorder can order a beer or a mixed drink, and that's fine because they can do that in safety, right? I know I can't, just like you said, you can't drink anymore, right? I know I can't, so I don't. And to have that be that new expectation of no longer is it going to be oh, I don't want to go to that because I know that's just a booze fest. No, it's we're here for I guess a different reason, bringing people together other than just alcohol. It's whether it be a work function here like we're talking about, or getting together to share with other people in recovery. I've had plenty of meals over the years with people in recovery. We go to restaurants and everyone's drinking around us, and that's fine because they can't. But there's a lot of seltzers and Cokes at our table.
It's a gift. Lisa talked about systems and processes. So you one message to share with audience is that you can establish and build new systems and processes in old environments, whether it's work, the restaurant, the family gathering, the graduation party. Like alcohol is so ingrained in our society. It's just so built into, going to a sporting event. Or one thing that I needed to overcome early was work travel and going through the airport. For me, the airport is one giant bar. You step into this vortex where people can drink at 6 a.m. Like, it's just,
it's normalized.
Think about it. It's bizarre, right? Like it's this place where no rules exist, and you can just belly up like 24/7. And I think about strengthening exercises in sobriety. My first year of sobriety, there are all the firsts. Got to go through the first birthday, the first July 4th, the first Christmas, holidays, and that is true for me with work as well. So first work trip, first airplane ride, first sales conference, little tips and tricks that have helped me along the way is just like I used to plan and rehearse what I would drink and look ahead to that, applying that same strategy to not drink. So, if you're going to sit down and other people might order a drink, or, I would be nervous about people, why aren't you drinking? Or what's going on? Is everything okay? Just saying, I'm good with water, or I'll have Pellegrino with some limes, or I'm good for now. Just having something planned to defend my sobriety. Same with the airport, that I was not going to sit at a bar. I was going to sit at a table and be a restaurant patron, not a bar stool bandit, that I was going to shift away. And those little changes compound over time, and they change my systems and processes. So Lisa mentioned in that, it just reminded me of strengthening exercises in sobriety. We need repetitions, we need intention and goals, and I need other people around me who subscribe to the same program of living, way of thinking. Because I can't do anything alone. I need community and help to figure it out, and just keep repeating what works.
Earl, it's not lost on me that here you are talking about the airport is one big bar when you were drinking, and the whole reason you're here is because you were sober on an airplane and talked to Lisa.
Right?
So,
yeah.
How cool.
So cool. And we were coming back from a conference. We were at the Behavioral Health Tech Conference. I want to give a shout out to Marin Nelson, who was one of the executives who founded Soberforce. Marin has since left Salesforce and started a company called Sobrint, which helps employers to establish recovery-friendly workplace, replicate the work that she and we did at Salesforce elsewhere, help companies work through building community, understanding the business value in that. And so Marin had invited me to this conference last year. And she's the whole reason that I was able to step through my role at Soberforce and have that opportunity, and then end up on an airplane with Lisa. So shout out to Marin and Sobrint. And yeah, it's funny how things work in the universe.
Yeah.
That's so very cool. And, we as an organization, right? So, we put this podcast out coming from a treatment and recovery space, but I do think there's even room for, for us to learn and grow in that as well. We employ a large percentage of our, not the size of Salesforce for sure, but about 1,000 employees in our, little nonprofit corner of the world. But we also run 5 peer recovery support centers and employ, direct peer roles and just staff, just like Jesse, right? Who come to this work because of their lived experience. And I think even us as an organization just have the opportunity to constantly be thinking about how can we become even more recovery friendly? Like, how can we support people even more? And I think that's just a message that all employers could hear. Regardless, I think it's really fabulous that in a sales environment with historically, high alcohol use and other things that there's an effort there. But I really think all employees need to. I think you described really beautifully the business cost there. That loss of productivity time. Just whenever we can increase our employees' wellness, the organization thrives, right? So if people feel better, they work better, they create more community, they stay longer, like all of the things that employers should care about means they should care about this specifically.
Yeah, well said. Agreed. I have the gift of teaching. You mentioned faculty position at University of New Hampshire. I'm about to begin that next week. So wish me luck. It is a new chapter of my career, and Salesforce is how I got through the door. The course is about AI and the use of Salesforce. UNH was an account when I was their rep, and long story short, have landed on this opportunity. And the way that I'm thinking about it and approaching it is exactly as you described, that my career at Salesforce was made possible because of my sobriety. My customer relationships and the trust that I was able to build was made possible because of my sobriety. I had an opportunity to enable technology and help organizations innovate and do cool things because I showed up each day sober and naturally curious, in a servant mindset, looking to give and not take. When I drank, I was a consumer. I was looking, scanning who can help me. And, you talk about serving your employees and companies, just continuing to do more to help employee wellness. That is my approach to becoming a teacher, a college faculty, adjunct professor. Is I'm going to have an opportunity to stand in front of 30 young minds for 21 hours, over the next 7 weeks. And my sobriety is a big part of my Salesforce experience and story. So they think that they're coming in to learn about, AI agents and dashboards and reports and automation and, slick enterprise technology. And that will be part of it. But really, it's about the human, the person, that they are a set of core values. No matter what you're doing, if you sell software or anything else, it is going to be your own personal value, who you are as a human being, that dictates your success, I believe. And that's been my experience. So I'm excited for that and hoping that they can carry that message forward over time. I wish somebody, when I was in college, told me it was okay to not drink. And that as I thought about my career, that there are options that include a sober path. So anyway, I wanted to share that too. I'm excited for that opportunity.
I'm excited for you, Earl.
Yeah.
Just a takeaway that I'll bring with me from our conversation here today is that, you are a shining example that recovery and success in your career can coexist. Because so often I find that people in recovery, on one hand, yes, we can do anything we want provided we have a strong foundation. But there's also this mindset of, limiting, oh, I can't do that because I'm in recovery. Oh, I can't do that because of maybe something I did in my past. And, again, just a shining example of, you are an adjunct professor at a college now, directly related to your experience with sobriety. And that has not limited you, but it has opened doors in your professional life.
And that's
Likewise, I truly envy the work that you all do, and I fantasize about a time in my life when I can shed the corporate shackles and choose more impact work. I have a friend who works at Google out in New York, and he is about to break away from corporate America and start his own rehab facility. And to me, that's a dream come true. The work that you all do every day is where I want to be. That's where my heart lives. I have 2 young kids and a family on my back at the moment. So I'm trying to juggle both, corporate responsibility and opportunity, but also find ways to lead with my sobriety. Because that, to your point, is that's what's making it happen. And I don't have a family. I don't have a job if I drink or drug. It's just not there. It all falls apart. So, yeah, thank you for those kind words, and truly, I applaud the work that you all are doing, and I'm envious. I hope I can be in your spot someday, sooner rather than later. And
when you're ready,
it's a goal of mine.
Give us a call, right? Like maybe there's a cool opportunity, right? That maybe this is part of that when things just fall in the way that they should. But one of the things that I think I really that's been on my list to highlight, which I think is very related, is you described really, really beautifully your supportive manager that really just helped kind of see and shine the light on you as your sobriety as a strength. Like, this is what differentiates you. This is what makes you different. And I have the wonderful gift in my work of surrounding myself with others that are in recovery. And I've said it on this podcast before, I'll say it again. There is a light that comes from folks who are in recovery that the rest of us might not have. And it comes from the hard work of getting to that place. It comes from the inquiry and the requirements that you have to really look at your own stuff to, lead with that. I really think there is a unique shining that comes from folks in recovery. And I think it really speaks a bit to that, attraction you described of, like, you can just be there, be supportive to others, but just shine your light. And that is an attraction to people. And I think that that's the thing, to come off of what Jesse was saying, that sometimes we can all have kind of self-limiting thoughts, that we can also hold space for the fact that this actually makes more things possible, that you can actually do more than somebody not in recovery, even if they don't have a substance use disorder, right? Like, even if that's not a particular, one of their concerns, that there's a elevation and a light that comes from folks in recovery. And this podcast and my day-to-day work shows me that every day. So thank you so much for shining yours.
Oh, appreciate that. And it's like you said, a community effort, people helping people. My manager, he knew about how much trouble I have been in with my drinking, and he still believed in me. He knew that I was in a fragile place early in my recovery, and he still hired me. He knew that I was afraid of navigating a big corporate environment early in sobriety, and he encouraged me. He was the one that said, "Hey, did you see there's a Soberforce Slack channel now? Like, it exists. I had always said, we have all these resource groups. Like, there should be one for sober people. Like, it seems like it would fit. Like, and then boom, overnight it was there. He was the one that informed me about it, and yeah, I mean, there are statistics out there about having a manager that will support you, will, advocate for you if you need to go to rehab or go take time off and get help, like not going to force you or, exclude you from events if it's, alcohol related. Like, a manager really can be a force multiplier in somebody at a fragile point, and even like long-term recovery. Like, we all go through things in life. We all need help along the way. And yeah, I'm so grateful for my manager and just supportive people who are open-minded, and even if they don't subscribe to recovery or sobriety, to just let me be, just let me be where I'm at and understand that I can't do that. This is where I live, and I'm still going to show up and try to be the best person I can be.
We're better together.
Yeah,
Better
absolutely.
together.
Yep.
And I think
sure.
that's a good, message that we might be able to end here with is, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of us are working in lots of different environments, lots of different fields, lots of different, places. And you don't have to have a structure of Soberforce. It's great if we can start more of those things. It's great if there could be more of that. But one of the places that every single person can start is to be that supportive person, be that supportive coworker. And if you're a manager, that's your real opportunity and gift, right? As a manager, is to support those that work for you. So you described really well, like getting to know someone, right? Enough to know, what, I'm not going to send you a wine gift basket at Christmas, right? I'm going to make a different choice, but getting to know your staff as people, and then really looking for those opportunities to be that supportive manager, to give people the space that they need to thrive. Like, really, it doesn't matter what structure you have or what field you're in. Everybody has that opportunity.
Yeah, well said. And we all need it. We all need help and support, and it's a two-way street. I believe the more I give, the more I get. It's sharing and helping other people. The secret is that selfishly it helps me too.
Yeah.
So
Right. That also, I'm such a quote dork, right? But that always makes me think of, I think the Dalai Lama describes it as wise selfishness, right?
Yeah.
So when you give to others and you support others, it gives back to you kind of tenfold. And so, like, that's it. It could be selfish, but it's wise selfishness. It's not the same thing, right? And I think there's so much in recovery community that is just that, right? Your opportunity to continue to give it away. And I love that you get to do that as a teacher now too.
Thank you. Well, you guys have helped me. This has been an honor, truly a privilege. I'm so grateful, being able to have these types of discussions. It reinvigorates my sense of self, reminds me why it's important for me to choose sobriety today. And so thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you, Earl. Thank you for being brave enough to come on here and share your story. And like you said at the beginning, and as we're wrapping up here, even if just one person hears it and is impacted, then experience, strength, and hope delivered.
That's it. Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
All right. This is my favorite way to start any day. So with that, we will wrap up this fantastic episode of Airing Addiction. As Jesse mentioned, we have a fabulous kind of weekly schedule coming ahead. So we get nothing from this podcast other than hope and joy. And so, but we want to spread more of that. So subscribe, do all of those things so you don't miss another amazing episode. Check out past ones. If you have not had the chance to, you won't regret it. And happy almost Recovery Month.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Earl.